everybody to this industry panel. So those of you who were at DE2011, remember we ran a similar panel there with a distinguished panel of industry experts. We thought it was a really useful exercise because the digital economy theme is so user-centric. It has over 400 users engaged with the academics, and there's a really good collaboration across the patch. We thought it was really good to actually give some players from industry an opportunity just to put forward a few minutes, 5 to 8 minutes. I've asked them to speak, just to say what are the main issues from their perspective. What keeps them awake at night, if you like. What would they like to say to you, giving a platform? So this is their platform. This is their platform to say, yeah, these are some of the main issues and questions, and they've given some thought to some of the things they want to cover. So I'm not going to say very much. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So you can see there's 5 people on there. They're from a wide spectrum of different industries and organisations. And then after they've introduced each other, we're just going to take it in turns, and they're going to go through and just give a short, say, 5 to 8 minute presentation, not with any PowerPoint, hopefully, but just talk to you. And then, hopefully, we have to be out of here at 11:30 for Wendy Hall, but we get some opportunity for questions. But I'll be keeping an eye on the clock. So without further ado, so Henning, do you want to just kick off, say who you are?
Yes, thanks very much. My name is Henning Kaltheuner. I'm head of product planning at Riedel Communications, Germany. Our company is specialized on communication and network technologies for broadcast and event systems. And we're in the market for 25 years, and Riedel has been one of the pioneers of digitalization of media signal transport. So Riedel was one of the first companies introducing digital communication to broadcast production, and that has been a huge success story. And we're now very busy in networking media signals. Digital media signals, in difference to what you know from the consumer world. In broadcast production, signals have to be transported in real time with very, very low latencies, while the data bandwidth that's required is huge, really huge, imagining 3 gigabit per second for each TV camera. So that requires special technologies. But the real story is that what we're looking at right now is networking these systems. And that's a huge difference to just digitalization, because the networking really changes the workflow. And we have products in the market, and the one thing I would like to talk about is that introducing networking really changes the game completely, because it changes the workflows. And then suddenly, although you have a nice technology in the market, you will find that you have to take the psychology into respect behind all this. And you will find that introducing technologies like this has to take the human evolution into respect. People have to adapt to things, and that always takes a while and a time. And also the manufacturers, again, have to adapt to what people develop for new workflows. We found that it's absolutely impossible to invent workflows in the laboratory. It has to happen in a communication with the market. And that is a quite complex structure of things going on.
Good, okay. So was that your 1 minute pitch to say who you were, or was that your whole presentation? So, yes. Yeah, okay, right. So just introduce yourself, say who you are and what you do, but then we'll go on to the fuller thing in a minute. So Maria, over to you.
Okay, my name is Maria Sliwinska. I work for Cisco Systems, UK and Ireland. I'm the Innovation Program Manager. So I work with, you could say, a startup team within the company for UK and Ireland on innovation projects.
Good, thank you. Peter.
Peter Waggett from IBM. I run an emerging technology group, and despite my boyish good looks, I've been involved in IT for 20 years. So I've seen the industry evolve from punch tape and paper cards to smartphones and all this other stuff that's out there.
Great. Fraser.
I'm Fraser Burton from British Telecom, in particular BT Research, which is the centre of our research activity based in Suffolk. And I head up the university research program, which augments our in-house research activities with work across about 40 or 50 universities globally.
Yeah, Ian?
So I'm Ian Forrester. I work for BBC R&D, and I used to run a project called BBC Backstage, which you might have heard of, very big with open data a long time ago. And that'll do.
Good. Okay. So thanks. So that's everybody knows who's on the panel, and Henning's given you quite a good intro. Do you want to say any more, Henning?
You should have to be others. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just do it in slow creeping death. So ladies first. Maria, just your few minutes pitch then. Please.
Yeah, so I was thinking, what would be most interesting to talk to you about, and I think innovation is not only quite a buzzword these days, it's actually sort of the fuel of the future economy. So this is what my team works on. And basically, I would say our major challenge in our day-to-day work, as well as moving forward, is to embed innovation and to make innovation sustainable. So, innovation is, of course, an emerging process. It's always about finding new processes, and we do very much believe that that has to come out of actual projects and actual business rather than theory, which is what you mentioned. You also have to look toward commercialization, however. You also have to make sure that innovation is embedded, and is embedded both locally in the ecosystem locally and in the company. And so to make that a little bit more down to earth, let me tell you a little bit about what we do. What we do is our team applies for TSB funding. So what we're trying, first of all, is to de-risk innovation to a certain degree. Now, yes, we are a very big company, but we also have to look at commercialization and at what we can bring to market. So the decision on where innovation can be risked, let's say, has to be made very, very thoroughly. So what we do is we look at what type of innovation is needed. So I do believe embedding innovation also means thinking about the actual market for innovation rather than innovating somewhere away from the real world and then not thinking about how to actually bring this to market, who the stakeholders are. So what we do is we look at the TSB bids most of all and think about what kind of technology fit we have and where we could develop things, where we could adapt things, where we need to find something new. Working with the TSB also means that we end up working and we end up leveraging relationships that we have with local authorities. So that's yet another way of embedding innovation, is actually working with local stakeholders. So I'm working with cities, working with local authorities, understanding the needs that they have, understanding the challenges that they have, and thus understanding the customer, rather than, again, sitting somewhere in an R&D lab and just developing out of thin air, so to speak. We also make sure that the projects that we run are embedded locally. So I think it's very important. Manchester's, Media City actually is a very good example. It's a very local brand. It's a local innovation brand for media. Up here, there's Tech City in London, which is another innovation brand. But you can't just transpose and take Media City somewhere else. You have to look at the local economy. You have to look at the economy that's there, at the industry. You have to look at industry stakeholders. So, that could be medical devices, that could be advanced manufacturing. It's really important to make sure that the innovation you're working on is embedded with the local stakeholders and that the partners in the innovation process work together with these stakeholders. Again, the projects that we work on have yet another aspect, and that is being involved with SMEs and with startups. So that whole process of creating an innovation ecosystem means that large companies have to work with smaller companies. And smaller companies are usually more flexible. They have faster routes to market. They sometimes have more creative and risky ideas. They often need help in commercialization. They need help sometimes with technical expertise, legal mentoring. That's what we do. That's what we've done in several projects. That's what we've done in several pilot projects, actually, that we've run to test out how can you create such a local ecosystem of stakeholders, again, involving local authorities, involving startups and SMEs, involving large technology players, and involving universities. So we do work with universities as well. We have several people from Imperial and UCL in our team, partly to analyze our business model innovation approach, partly to help us in technical areas. Well, maybe not so much help, but look at what we're doing and build the academic concepts around that. So I would say it's a very, very encompassing approach to innovation, and I think that's very important. And also in regard to digital skills, that it's basically the same thing. You need a very variegated type of skill sets. Digital skills are crucial, yes, now and moving forward as well, but so are more traditional skills like analytical thinking, asking the right questions, you know, forming your opinion on what it is you're looking for, collaborating. And so all of this is sort of what we do. It's our day-to-day business, even though we're not really a day-to-day part of the company. As I mentioned, we're a startup business within the company, so we know what the challenges are as well.
Good. That's very good. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So can I hand over to Peter?
Okay. As I said, I run an emerging technology group, and that's pitched as being a bridge between the R&D community and client projects. And for me, that's a really important role, and I'll come back to it later as to why I think it's something that we need to start a discussion on. My background is astronomy and rocket science. So if someone says this isn't rocket science, I can say, great, I can't help you. But one of the things that came out of that, which is two of the very early big data sort of like tasks out there, is that I learned a huge amount about handling large data and handling data where you're uncertain about the model, but you're also uncertain about the data. So one of the best examples I got early on of, I guess, learning through mistakes was that I was one of the NASA scientists who didn't spot the ozone hole. And why I say that is that I looked at data about the ozone layer for 2 years as part of my research work, because I used it as a calibration source, and never spotted the fact that there was a hole in the ozone layer. Now, what had actually happened and why I was fooled by that was that there was an assumption that the ozone layer was constant, therefore any data that wasn't constant was thrown out as being bad data. So I analysed every piece of data I saw, I just didn't see the bits that would have actually given me a clue as to what was going on. So that was a very important lesson that I learned early on. And I think this idea of working around big data in sort of like where there's uncertainty in the data sets, but also in the models, is really important. And that's why I think that, I know that recently there's a report being published called Seizing the Digital Opportunity. And I think that this is a hugely important first step towards getting us into this area of dealing with real-world examples. But one of the things I think that's important is that, you know, I see this as a stepping stone. It's very good at outlining what to do with the people, what to do with the actual data sets that are coming up. But I think there's a problem comes when you start to convert it into the real world. So, you know, how do I see that we need to tackle this? And I think really what we need to do is we need to look at an area of skills that isn't really being addressed to date, particularly well, in my opinion anyway. And to outline how I see those skills happening, if I give you an analogy, again, going back to my early research activity, if you think about what happened with, you know, say, the scientists I was working in, there's a different set of skills that you try to deploy. And the analogy I give you is that there's an astronomer, a physicist, and a mathematician walking through the countryside. In the distance, they see a sheep on a hill. And the astronomer says, look, all sheep are black, because that sheep was black. The physicist says, no, that's wrong. They said, that sheep's black. And the mathematician says, hang on a tick, that side of that sheep is black. Now, all three of those assumptions could be correct. Only two of them are actually testable. The mathematician's isn't particularly testable. But also, the mathematician's one isn't particularly useful. So if we apply that analogy to the digital economy domain, what I tend to find is that a lot of the business people tend to be the astronomers. They'll give you the vision. The actual mathematicians tend to be the systems implementers. And what I think is missing is the gap in the middle, which is the physicists. And that's really trying to take solid data and vision, apply some kind of hypothesis to build up a set of rules that you can then test to enable to get real digital value. So really what I'm about in terms of trying to do with my work is trying to build up that set of skills in people to understand how to bridge between the two different communities. As an example of what we've done, you know, recently we've been looking at an insurance company that has a business model which is based on, they give you a quote depending on how many bedrooms you've got. They're finding their business being eroded. They're looking, people are coming in, picking up niche parts of it, and they want to actually understand how to better represent their business. So what I've been doing is working with them to try and understand how we can do a better model. Now, the communities are saying, how about if we change the square footage, because that's much better. That's the business people saying that. The implementers telling me, well, hang on a tick, I only know about bedrooms. I don't know anything about square footage. How am I supposed to assess the risk on this thing here? Actually, what we've been doing with my team is actually saying, okay, let's go to a model whereby we look at the real crux of the issue, which is what is the risk associated with this insurance problem, and convert a system whereby you just go in with your mobile phone, take a video of your house. That video is then analysed to work out what the value of that house is and its contents, and you get a quote based on that system there. So it's a very different way of thinking about it, and it's a very different way of tackling it, and it wouldn't have been coming at it from either the business end or the implementer's end. So I think that's important. So really what I just want to summarise up is that I think that we've got a really good starting point with the Seizing the Digital Opportunity report. I think it does outline, what we need to do about the data. But I think there's a gap, which is what happens when you have uncertain business models and uncertain data, and how we build up a set of skills that can actually tackle those skills. And I hope I've illustrated that I think they're very different skills to either implementation or business models. So thank you.
Good, thank you, Peter. Fraser, over to you.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, I'm from BT Research, so my focus is very much on working with universities and research councils to understand the future skill shortages that we're likely to see that will impact both BT's business and also our customers. And really the elephant in the room is data science. We have, or we see a real shortage in people with data analytics skills and data scientists coming through. So this is wider than computer science, this is wider than statistics, this is wider than operational research. It's all of those together, and it's also understanding not simply detailed algorithms, but what the data is telling you in terms of what it means for the business and also for our customers and our customers' businesses. So that, if you only take one thing away, I think that really is it. We're looking very much at working with the Digital Economy Theme on building up data science skills. And also, as Peter said, I think the recent government paper on building data capability does identify quite an urgent need for building up data analytics skills. Because not only does data science offer the ability to achieve quite substantial efficiency savings in a very wide range of different applications, it can also be applied to corporate decision making. So you can move away from hippos, which is the highest paid person's opinion, and move towards quantitative decision making, which I think for all of the scientists in the room does sound attractive. I had to use the hippo joke. I only recently discovered it, but I quite like it. Okay, of course, data science is not the only thing we're looking for. Sustainability is a key area. It's not a single discipline. It's not a neat, tidy set of skills, but it really is addressing a key challenge, not just for BT or for the UK economy, but for all of us. So I really have to fly the flag for sustainability. And if you can combine data science with sustainability by efficiency improvements, then I think we're really pushing on the right door there. As the digital economy grows, the information economy grows, it's going to become more valuable. And this means that people who can fix it are going to have rare premium skills. So there's going to be increasing global demand for people with these skills. Also, with greater value, there is the need for trust mechanisms, security mechanisms, and constant attention on privacy. Data privacy, data ownership is going to be really key. Because with this much value kicking around, you need to understand what you own as individuals and as corporations, and make sure that the information that you use is used appropriately, and that you're using other people's information appropriately. So that's really, really key. Other notes I had. What this means for you, again, I would flag data science, sustainability, social inclusion, really important. The applicability of this data means it's touching more and more people's lives. So it's important that everybody can use these tools and techniques and understands what it means for them. Also inclusivity, so that excluded communities can also use this more and more. In terms of the digital economy theme itself, I think very much pushing on the right areas, that the key challenges are bang on. Growing, again, as I said, data science, sustainability, security, those really are key areas. The government's emphasis in the recent paper on seizing the data opportunity, they highlight supporting intellectual property with SMEs. I think it's not just SMEs that need intellectual property. All of us need to understand intellectual property. It's not part of a technical education, but intellectual property is going to be increasingly important to supporting innovation and understanding where we are in a data analytics world. Smart cities, very much the way of the future. Again, that's combining data analytics and sustainability. There's going to be more and more on massive online open courses, so that a wider set of people can gain access to training on data science. One more flag, statistics. We really need people with a fundamental understanding of statistics. So it kind of underpins everything. Superfast broadband, I have to say that I'm BT, so yes, superfast broadband is a key enabler. And open data, you can't have big data unless you have access to the data. So again, that does seem like a clear good thing, with all the protections and privacy caveats that are so important. I think I've probably talked for long enough, so thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for keeping time. So Ian, quick
Okay, my actual job title is it's got Firestarter in it. Which kind of sums up what kind of person I am. I like to make things happen. So when I was at BBC Backstage, it was a developer network, and we worked with a single or kind of small, very, very small startups on data. This is probably about 6, 7, 8 years ago. So we were critical in, well, I think we were critical in kind of getting the government to actually kind of consider the kind of thoughts around open data. I also was one of the data portability founders, so working with the likes of Google and Facebook, trying to convince them that the data that they stored, the users may actually want that back at some point, which is kind of, you'll see sort of themes that I have later. This all seems to fit. But one of the things that I'm working on is, for BBC R&D, is a project which uses your data, not just your explicit data, because this is the thing, a lot of the data we're talking about is very explicit. You type this in, or you actively put this into the system. Also your implicit data, so where you are, what you're doing, how your mood, all those kind of things. The stuff that's a little bit harder to capture, and uses that to change the programming. Now, that might seem quite scary to a lot of you, and with the wrong kind of data, that could be quite scary. So it kind of brings up a load of questions about, trust, tools to deal with this kind of data. How do you actually maintain that this is the right kind of data, or this is the authority of this data? Is it actually correct? Some of the things that you've already covered. I'd also point out that there's some other challenges, and we already talked about intellectual property. One of the biggest challenges for the BBC is that, so for example, we have a thing called BBC Redux, which I'm sure people have heard of, and it stores about, I think, up to 5 years of every single programme on the BBC, and we would love to make that available to the taxpayer. Unfortunately, the intellectual property lawyers would go and have a field day. I'd probably have a field day for about the next 25 years. And so, this needs to be kind of sorted out. I think you're right that actually people need to be a lot more clued up about intellectual property, because it's a real tricky area, and if you don't understand it, you need to understand it. there's also a bunch of stuff around identity. I'm really big into transparency and actually making this transparent to the user or to the audience, what they're actually giving up. So kind of, this is what we got on you. It's really interesting. There's also a bunch of things around data bias, storage. There's enough. So you might have heard that the BBC is already kind of going to start a thing called My BBC. So the idea that you'll have some kind of identity on the BBC, and that will kind of work for like iPlayer and stuff like that. That data needs to be secure. It needs to, any kind of leak, and it's basically the BBC's values and will be kind of shattered. So it's really, really important that we actually get that right. I'd also point out that I've not seen many tools for collaboration. There's lots of tools of like you can work on this stuff, and you can see complete coverage of it all yourself. But how do you work with partners? How do you, but not show them certain parts of data? And really interesting. And collaboration is the kind of lifeblood of what I think is the lifeblood of the future of what we do. And it seems crazy that we haven't got those kind of tools to support that. I think that pretty much sums me up for now.
Brilliant. Well, I must say thank you to you guys for sticking very much to time. That's fantastic.
Okay.
I thought we were just going to overrun and Dave Wendy would be banging on the door. But anyway, so we have actually got quite a bit of time now, 25 minutes or so for questions. I've got some questions, but it's in case you lot all dry up. And I can't imagine, knowing you guys, that you're going to be short of any questions. But you've heard stuff like a desperate plea, I think, for Fraser for statisticians. I don't know if anyone is in the audience, but I know Claire's into maths, so she might be up for that one. But it's good questions, good overview here, talking about data, open data, and IP. I think that was interesting because Ian Livingston made this plea about protecting your games and your intellectual property. But lots of common messages, lots of things about skills, some really good points being raised here, but I think let's just throw it over to you guys, see if you've got anything you want to tap into this intellectual asset here that and probe this panel of experts. So over to you guys.
Wow.
Done. Ashley's got one at the back there, yeah. I can hear you, but it's not on.
No.
It's still not on there.
Just speak up.
Project.
Yeah, that's the first time actually, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
If you can hear me, I'll just try and speak.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating to take the physicist that position and spread that idea that you need people who have a particularly broad set of reflective skills and problem solving. The thing is, if you take that through the training process, you quite often end up with a demand for one-year programs teaching people a set of courses that are quite specific to those needs. And it's pretty hard to value the extra 2 to 3 years that produces someone who's had 1 year of general training and then has followed various problem-solving processes to come up with something that may be quite specific. It may not be used again, but at least is a good research training. How do you value those 2 to 3 extra years compared to a 1 year program? Because if you're not very careful about that, you may end up with a lot of the former and very, very little of the latter.
That's a good question, and I'm not going to attempt to answer it. Does anybody here want to attempt to answer it?
Yeah, I guess picking up on that sort of thing, I think that I've noticed is that quite a few of the people that thrive in the group that I'm doing, which I say is playing in this area of uncertainty, tend not to fit anywhere else. Now, that may be something about them, or it may be something about what we're trying to do, but their backgrounds vary. I've got people who I would not put in front of a customer. I keep them in cupboards when they come round. I've got people who can talk through the business issues at a sort of like a reasonable level. And I think there's something missing. And I think you hit the crux of it there, which is problem solving. And it's the sort of person that I've got. Works well when they've got given a problem that's growth or trouble mode. They don't like steady state sort of business. They like to be constantly innovating. And a couple of observations I've had is that from one of my guys, working with clients, that one of the best compliments I got was that, well, he's not really professional, but he's a very gifted amateur. And, you know, I do think that, say, that was meant as a compliment because he does have this ability to dabble in quite a few fields. So I'm slightly concerned that we're getting very rigid in where we're forcing people to go through their disciplines. And certainly from my perspective, that bridging ground really needs people that got a span of activities. Now, that may not fit in with current models in terms of how degrees are put together, but I do worry that that's going to be an increasing concern over time.
I think you're right, because I mean, the problem I see is that there's a real push right now to get more people kind of coding and stuff like that, and it's like, well, okay, that's great, but we need more people that are kind of can fit between, are kind of the glue between. And so, for example, I'm a designer originally. That's what I did at university, but I don't do real design at work. I do research. So, and I think we need more people who do fit. Kind of, they have done a year or so, as a statistician, but also understand other aspects of a job. Otherwise, it just seems ridiculous that we're going to hire people that are very, very rigid and it just doesn't fit. Especially when we're talking about collaboration or not.
I very much agree. This is the same experience that we have. I don't want to dishearten anyone, but actually the computer science, the unemployment among computer scientists is the highest among any other group of graduates. And so there must be something wrong with the computer science degrees these days. And we do find that we need people with, of course, digital skills, data analysis skills, computer skills, but also transferable skills. So people who can create their own jobs, who can, ask, as I said before, ask the right questions, analyze what they have there. This is very much how my team works. We are creating work for ourselves. We are finding the innovation. There's nobody telling us here, that's the data set, analyze it. We have to look at what's out there. We have to look for fits. We also work with SMEs a lot, and what we see is the most successful ones actually come from an approach out of the verticals. So rather than someone who's theoretical and who has, the abstract skills, the technical skills, there's someone who's actually in the field and who finds a problem and who says, oh, this problem needs solving. And then they get the digital skills, or they get the people with the digital skills to solve the problem. But they would hire someone if they don't have those skills out of that question from the vertical, rather than approaching it from a very high level, research perspective. And also, I think that on another level, the vocational education could be strengthened a lot, because the sort of basic computer skills that are needed, for technical maintenance, for networking, which is what we do, that could really be provided in more vocational programs. So it would be, I think, a great move to strengthen that branch a little bit more, which is what we're trying to do as well.
I can very much confirm from my viewpoint. Yes, we need the very clever designers of technology in any respect, yes, but the successful ones, the successful products that really are game changers in the industry, they more come from people that have that glue talent and know how to position products exactly in a market, in a field, according to the meaning of what they want to do. And this is different from just digitalization. It's really the glue in between the technology and the human beings that make use of the technology. Without that, it doesn't help. Whatever you do, you won't be able to produce something that makes sense. Yeah. To say it very radical.
Or explain it to anyone so it makes sense.
Well, I think this group of people here are these bridging people. But Brian, you had a question, I think. Yes.
It's Brian Clements. I'm the chairman of the Programme Advisory Board for the Digital Economy Programme, so I'm helping construct the future of this programme. I too am an astrophysicist, and
I won't hold it against you.
and probably relative to you, I saw big data too, where big data was relative to the size of the machine you've got. So if you measure your machine in kilobytes, then megabytes are big. My question is to do with innovation outside the digital community. Because if digital is going to change the way in which the world works, I've probably spent the last 5 years of the 25 I've been involved in digital thinking about, well, how does the world work and how does digital transform it? And whilst the bottom-up movement that a lot of you talked about is obviously extremely important, the barriers quite often come from the top down, and other professions not realising they've got to change as fast as digital is changing its world, and as digital becomes pervasive, I think one of the barriers is how fast other professions are catching up or not catching up with how fast digital is applying pressures to it. So my question is, from a business point of view, are businesses helping with that process or hindering that process? And they don't work in digital per se, they work in building buildings or running transport systems or building power stations, for instance, which sort of makes the world work for us. That community really needs to change as fast as the digital community, and I just wonder how we can help them realise their potential and our potential better.
Good question. So,
This is a lot of what we do, actually. Thanks very much for saying that. I think innovation is a lot about talking to the right people and, in the first place, finding the right people to talk to. So, for example, one of the research projects that we have right now is about putting lighting on the internet, basically. So, power over Ethernet lighting. Now, the building managers are saying this is our domain. We're saying, well, this is actually going to be IT. The IT people are saying, no, lighting, that's not our stuff. It's exactly the problem that you're mentioning. And so a big part of our work is sitting down and discussing and getting people to buy into the project, explain what we do, and do collaborative innovation. You can't innovate as a business and then just throw it at them and say, here, take it away. You have to sit down and actually innovate together. This is why we sit down with local authorities, we sit down with the building managers, we sit down with construction companies. Everyone has to be in the boat, and I think this is how we're trying to make it work.
yeah, Peter, yeah.
I'm really picking up from that as well, in that two of the areas that I'm working at the moment are most impacted by the potential of IT, the medical field and the legal profession. Both of those, we're deploying a technology that was developed that we're calling Watson, which is this idea of cognitive computing. For those who may remember, it was the system that beat human players of a game called Jeopardy. Now, the interesting thing is that the rate of increase in knowledge in both of those fields is pretty much exponential. It's very difficult to see how a human can keep track of what's coming through there. But you're challenging some really interesting beliefs within those organizations that we can provide a machine that can give you an aid that will change your business. Now, currently how I'm pitching it is that, it's an 80-20 rule. If we can deal with 80% of the routine cases and free you up to spend your time on the better 20%, then that makes a big difference to them. So I think, we're in for a really rocky road with this thing. The timescale that we do with these big challenges that we did, the chess one, back in '97 we played a chess grandmaster and beat him, and that was a state-of-the-art mainframe with a huge programming team. Within 7 years, that same processing power was deployed as the PlayStation 3 chip. So it went from state-of-the-art mainframe to in every teenager's bedroom in 7 years. We're 2 years down the Watson journey, so expect some kind of response in there. Now, clearly, I'm hoping it's not going to happen too long because I've got a daughter who's a fifth-year medical student and I've paid all her bills all the way through. So I don't want her to be redundant before she starts paying me back. But it is going to be a real game changer in some of these industries.
Fraser?
Yeah, I would say industry by industry, we need to gradually prove the public good for these techniques. And that is, I think it's going to be a rocky road. Smart cities, I think, is a good example of how a public good can be derived. You can improve congestion and energy consumption. But we've got to be ever so careful about privacy and data ownership. I think recent events show that you can, even a government organisation can destroy trust in itself instantly, and it's going to take years, decades to rebuild that trust, if ever. So I'd say demonstrating public good, respecting privacy, data ownership is paramount. I don't want to demonise lawyers, but intellectual property and the legal profession exists to protect all of us, but it's also a brake on everything. So I think we all need to understand better what the issues are, why those safeguards are in place, and what to do about it, because it's still not clear what to do in those areas.
Can I demonize lawyers? I would do that.
Anybody else want to chip in?
Just on the demonising lawyers bit on there, I mean, one of the issues we do get is quite often with liability. And I've done a couple of health systems where, you know, there's a huge ecosystem of partners. And the usual thing I say is, okay, so who owns the patient? And everyone says me. If I say, so what happens if the patient dies? It's his. So, you know, you do have these issues that you need to really understand and understand where to apportion the risk and the responsibility and the liability. But at the moment, we're being killed off by a lot of the legal overheads.
Yeah. So do you want to give the German perspective?
I have a personal viewpoint on your question, which is that 20 years ago, in the early days of computing, we were dreaming of having more processing speed. We were dreaming of having more hard drive capacity, more memory. And then everybody was saying, oh, if we had that, then we could do this, and then we could do that. And then. So the limiting factor has always been technology. So everybody was aiming for better technology, more speed, more performance. My personal viewpoint on this is that the limiting factor in the future is not going to be the technology, it's going to be the humans.
Mm. Yes.
And the question is not anymore, can we have more processor speed, but the question is going to be, what is it good for?
Yeah.
And this is the real challenge in the future behind all these developments like big data or networking or whatever. But I don't think it's a problem. I think it's something very positive if we treat it the right way for our benefit.
I think that actually touches back on the skills question again, because that means that you know, while engineering skills will definitely remain important, the focus is no longer bigger, bigger, faster, better in terms of the machine. It's actually, again, asking the right questions. Also, you know, about big data. All this amount of data, all of that unstructured data. In a sense, yes, it's an opportunity. I don't agree with the report in that it says it is the oil of the future. I don't think it's the oil because it's not a scarce resource. It's abundant. We just have to find out what to do with it. So again, it's about establishing the right processes within companies, but also in ecosystems of different partners to actually ask what do we want to do with that data and how do we do that? And you know, establish probably pilot projects, which is the way we're trying to do that, to actually sit down with a local authority, sit down with an SME and say, okay, so if we want to solve the problem of traffic congestion in this area, what kind of data is out there? What can we do with it? You know, what are the challenges? What are the barriers that we have to overcome? All of that. So it's a very human approach to that rather than a technical one.
Yeah, good question. So let's see, we've another 10 minutes left. Anybody else got? Peter? Yes.
Peter Carlin from the University of York. But there were 2 points. A point about transferable skills for computer science students and a point about needing people to work in data science. Now, one of the great ways to deal with transferable skills is to allow our students to spend time in your businesses, do placement programs and this sort of thing. And a way to potentially begin to address the data science issue would be for your businesses and possibly RCUK to fund MSc courses in this area, in addition to whatever else we fund. I wonder if you could comment on those two.
Yeah. Peter,
I mean, one of the best sources I've got in terms of recruits coming through to my team actually comes from an intern program that we run. We run a thing called Extreme Blue, where we put 4 technologists and 1 business person together, give them a real problem, give them 3 months to try and solve it. Now, I say at the moment I've got limited bandwidth, and you know we're running 3 or 4 of these a year. But I think they're a stunning example of actually understanding the problems from both sides. I mean, we use them as a recruiting tool. I mean, you know, I've got no bones about it. The good guys that come out of that thing and good girls that come out of that thing, I will recruit. And so I think that's the sort of thing I'd love to see, is actually short, sharp problem, you know, and let that loose on as many people as we could.
Is that something you could imagine growing bigger?
Well, because of the way we've set it up, you know, it's gated by finance, which is the problem. You know, we've got, because we fund, I mean, the interns are paid while they're doing this. So, you know, for us, it is an investment. Plus, it takes one of my guys out, sort of like, for 3 months actually to mentor them and bring them through on it. but it is a real, nice. It's a very nice model as to how we can get benefit from both sides of that divide between industry and academia.
Fraser,
Yeah, I'd echo IBM's comments. We have a number of interns each year, and I think we set a number of challenges for an MSc at York through our security wing, which I agree is very much, it's a blatant recruitment tool, so it's kind of try before you buy, which is fantastic. I like the phrase gated by finance. We are indeed gated by finance. Problem with MSc courses is it's that bit lower down, because we tend to, make no bones about it, we like to cherry pick the very best PhDs. But obviously, we need to invest earlier on in order to start building those skills. But certainly internships and setting challenges for MSc courses is useful. Problem with data science, though, is to be particularly useful, they have to be real, large data sets. And then we're into privacy and data ownership issues. So obviously within BT we have some fantastic, huge data sets which we cannot share even internally because they are customer specific. So that is an ongoing challenge of how can we set realistic questions to masters and PhD students without bringing in huge contracts which basically limit everything that can be shared. So that's an ongoing problem as to how we can set sensible challenges on real data, or at least realistic data. The whole point of the large data set is we don't know what you're going to find in it. We're not going to hide data in fake data sets to see if you can extract it. That's an idea, but that's not ideal.
Does anybody else want to chip in on this one? About people movements and stuff. I just wonder whether, obviously you've got the German perspective, is it something we could learn from the German approach?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I see some shortage in the German education system.
I do think that actually the apprenticeship schemes are a bit more established in Germany, which is not quite the master's level, but placement of German computer scientists is actually much higher than the one in the UK. So there's a little bit more of an intermediate level as well, vocational academies, things like that. The way Cisco approaches this, by the way, Transferable Skills, is we offer additional courses that we actually give away virtually for free, content for entrepreneurial skills and networking academies. So we go this public-private partnership road, basically, that we offer to academies, to universities, to schools, so that they can make use of the things that we find useful, in training our stuff.
Just a quick one on that point is it's quite noticeable within my research unit that the majority of our data scientists are in fact German because we find them to be better rounded. They come out a little bit older, they've got better grounding in basic statistics, and so that is, we're not finding the right skills coming out of the UK.
Yeah. So is that a challenge to the computer scientists in the room, is it?
Very much so.
Right. Okay, I'm not going to identify the computer scientist, because the one sat in the second row just asked a question, but we'll have a talk later. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes. You start waving your hands about. So, any more sort of quick questions? Oh, yes, okay. That's the first time.
From Rising Digital Economy Research Institute, University of Nottingham. So there's been a little bit of mention about MOOCs, and I'm wondering whether Britain or universities in the UK should be concerned about industrial uptake of people coming out of sort of autodidact MOOC ways, or is that basically fanciful and you guys will continue to just cherry pick the PhDs?
Okay. So I'm not aware anyone's produced anything through MOOCs yet. It's a sort of future thing, isn't it? But
yeah, it's emerging, isn't it? It's the last couple of years that these started taking off, and within MOOCs themselves, they're looking at revenue models basically through accreditation.
okay. Anyone got any comments on?
Sorry, I didn't want to give the impression that we just picked up PhD students and things like that. Actually, one of the other sources that we've got is with Southampton University, we have a sponsored student program, And again, some of those people that are working in industry and academia as part of their degree have proved to be really successful in this sort of space. So, you know, I'm not, say, ruling out any other routes. At the moment, we explore as many as we can, and it tends to be the ones that are, if I could say, like non-traditional, that in my area are better. Other parts of IBM, it's a different story. But for my area, where I say that the key is problem solving, I tend to get the people who don't fit anywhere else.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I mean, actually, the last discussion as well, yeah, we tend to, well, I tend to find people who are very non-traditional, who, you know, kind of come from that world or from, so actually I work a lot with like kind of hackers, you know, really early stage developers, and sometimes it's quite raw talent, but you can kind of then guide them, and they tend to be like really, really good, and or a potential for you know, to kind of be pushed in a certain direction. So you kind of go, okay, you've got real raw talent here. It needs a little bit of homing. Have you considered a PhD? Have you considered, you know, something like that? So a little bit more formal. And that, you know, I don't know if that answers your question, but it kind of, for a business like BBC, that's really helpful because we're helping the local community, and also, you know, kind of see helping ourselves a little bit by kind of homing the talent in a certain direction. You know, so actually in the last discussion, I was going to chime in and talk about how there's not really any kind of formal recognition of stuff like hack days. You know, stuff like that. Okay, so we did a hack day. We gave Redux access to about 600 developers, and some of the stuff that came out of it was incredible. But yeah, we obviously, once again, like we were saying, there's quite a lockdown. You know, we can never use that data outside of that environment because there's too many intellectual property considerations. But it was really interesting to see what people would do in that kind of environment with this kind of data. And it's just a shame that there's just not really, that's not really kind of talked about. It's kind of like, okay, these things happen, that's really just what, you know, those guys over there do, you know, not really kind of formally recognised. But actually some of the stuff that comes out of it is incredible. So,
I mean, there is a huge appetite in industry, in my experience, for people who want to get involved the other way back in terms of give back programs with universities. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that we've been very keen on across the group, is just getting out there and mentoring from old gits like myself. You know, can be quite useful.
Good. Well, we technically have run out of time. I can see Andrew starting to twitch there. So it just remains to me to say thank you to you, panel members, for giving up your valuable time. Thank you for your insights. I think I've certainly enjoyed hearing what you've been saying. I think you've thrown down a gauntlet to some of the people here, but I think you're talking to the right people. You know, these are people who have got the message, they've got the mindset. It's the people perhaps outside who need to, so this lot of the catalyst, if you like, to get a chemistry illusion in here, to go out there and evangelise to the rest of the community who aren't so enlightened. But thank you for those messages. Thank you, everybody. Please will you join me in thanking the panel.